In this lesson, we're going to learn just how easy it is to use Photoshop and the Photomerge feature to create beautiful panoramic images. Before we get into Photoshop, it's important we talk about the source images that you're going to use for your panorama. Your source photographs play a large role in panoramic compositions, and to avoid problems, we need to follow a few guidelines when we're taking our pictures to use with Photomerge. You'll want to make sure that your camera's in manual focus, not autofocus, as we don't want that focus to shift from photo to photo. We also don't want our aperture to change either, so to keep that depth of field the same, make sure that you're using one constant aperture across each of your photos. This will be easily done if we make sure we shoot in manual or aperture priority mode on your camera. Also, we don't want the white balance shifting from image to image either, so make sure that you've turned auto white balance off and you keep one constant setting. You'll notice that in each of my source images that I'm overlapping by about 25 to 40%. That's going to be important to make sure that Photomerge can do what it needs to do. When you take your photos, make sure to stand in one spot and keep the camera level from photo to photo. This is probably most easily done if you're using a tripod, although it's not absolutely necessary. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a series of 7 photos that I took standing off my back porch out towards the horizon. Now I took these at dusk, so they are a little bit dark, but we're going to go ahead and fix that after we've done our stitching. So we're going to get our panorama put together and then we'll do a little bit of post-processing then. Looking at these, you can see that there are elements in this image that are definitely overlapping. Like you can see this yellow house here that exists in both of them, because I want to have that 25 to 40% overlap. That's really important so that Photomerge can do its job. So let's go into Photoshop. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using Photoshop CC. However, the process is the same in CS6, with the exception of probably some of the post-processing I'm going to show you at the end, but I will show you how to do that in CS6 as well. It's just a little bit more of a process. So to get started, all we need to do is go to File, Automate, and then down to Photomerge. Once we've got the dialog open, we're just going to need to pick our files, or we can pick a folder of files. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to show you with files. Hit Browse. Click the first one, hold down Shift, and click on the last one. Select all 7 of my images, and then hit Open, and we'll see them here. Now, off to the left-hand side here, you can see some different types of layouts, and this is how Photomerge is going to attempt to distort and rotate and merge together all of these images. Now, we could stick with Auto, and that's usually going to be your best bet if you're not sure which one you want to use. Now, we could use Perspective or Cylindrical for this one. I know that Cylindrical is probably going to give me the best results for this series of images. I'm also going to click on Vignette Removal and Geometric Distortion Correction because why not? I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I don't have to deal with any of those things. If you feel like you want to try it without, that's perfectly fine. And I just do that and I'm going to hit OK. This is where we just let Photoshop do its magic. And there it is. One large, high-resolution panoramic image created from all 7 of those photos that I took. You can see right here we have 7 different layers, and each one of these is our original photo. If I hold down Option or Alt and I click on the eyeball here, we can see as we click through each one that Photomerge actually picks and chooses exactly where to draw this mask to get the best blend of each of these images. I'm going to Alt or Option click on each one of these, and we can see just how Photomerge has decided to add a mask and trim each one of these images to get a perfect seamless panorama. It has left these transparent areas around the image because as it's resized and aligned things, not everything is totally perfect here, especially as we consider how things warp as we turn the camera. So we're going to need to get rid of those, and it's as simple as just doing a crop. So I'm going to come over here and select the crop tool and just pull the top down just a little bit. And then come up here from the bottom as well. Pull in the sides. And then I'm just going to commit that. And there we go. We have this perfectly seamless panorama. We want to do some color correction because this photo is a little dark and a little bland for my taste, so we need to punch it up a little bit. To do that, we're going to flatten all of these images here down to one image. So to do that, we're going to go to Layer, flatten image. And there we go. So we flattened that down. From here, if you're in CC, it's pretty simple to get into the raw camera dialog, which I think is where I want to tweak this photo a little bit. So to do that, all we're going to do is we're going to come up here to Filter and down to Camera Raw Filter, and it's going to open up the Camera Raw dialog where we have all of the things like exposure, contrast, clarity, vibrance, saturation. So to start with, I'm going to bump this exposure up just a little bit. Give it some contrast, definitely pump up some clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Don't necessarily want this to be too blue over there. So you can see how we've kind of punched up this image just a little bit. Maybe you could use a little more saturation. Don't want to get this too unnatural. Maybe add a little bit of sharpening. And there we go. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to update in Photoshop. And there we have it. One high-resolution panorama created from our 7 different images, seamlessly stitched together using Photomerge in Photoshop. Now if you're doing this in Photoshop CS6, it's going to be a little bit different workflow, as this camera raw filter isn't going to show up. So we need to do this just a slightly different way. So assuming you have your camera raw preferences set up so that it automatically opens all supported JPEGs, we can save this image off as a JPEG and reopen it in Photoshop, opening up that camera raw dialog, and go through the exact same process we did before. If you have Lightroom and Photoshop, the workflow is even easier and a lot more powerful, so I want to cover how you do that. So I've got Lightroom open, and we've got the library open. You can see here's my same 7 images that I'm going to use for my panorama. To get started, let's go to the Develop tab. I'm going to go down here to my images, and I'm going to shift-click to select all of them, and right-click on just one of them. And you'll notice I have this edit in, and if I come down here, we can see Merge to Panorama in Photoshop. So I'm just going to click that. And we're going to see it's going to bring up that similar dialog that we saw before. Now we'll see that it's gone ahead and opened it up in the Photomerge dialog with all of our photos here. You'll notice I'm working with the RAW files instead of the JPEGs, and that'll be important when I'm going back and forth between Lightroom and Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and hit Vignette Removal, Geometric Distortion Correction, and pick Cylindrical, just as in the last tutorial. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to let this do its thing. So keep in mind it might take a little bit longer. I'm just going to compress some time through the magic of editing. So you can see, as before, we have that same seamlessly merged set of 7 photos to create our panorama. However, this time, instead of flattening all of this down and using the camera raw filter, I'm going to go ahead and just save it. Command S or File Save. And I'm going to go back to Lightroom. And you'll notice when I click back in Lightroom, we actually have that panorama stitched together and editable in Lightroom. So now I can do all of my cropping and color correction and all the normal tweaking that I would do in Lightroom right here without having to even go back into Photoshop.